Behind some of South Africa's greatest mineral discoveries, there was a man who listened to the land, Hans Merensky. His pioneering discoveries laid the foundations for South Africa's mining industry, creating opportunities and scientific knowledge that still influence the country today. In March 1871, Johannes Merensky was born at the Berlin Mission in Botshabelo, a land of rugged plains and restless skies. A decade later, he returned to Germany, but the rhythms of the veldt never left him. By 1904, he was back on African soil, armed with maps, microscopes, and an unquenchable curiosity. He walked the land, unearthing treasures that would reshape a nation. Yet he faced internment, financial ruin, and trials that tested him to the limit. This is the little-known story of the wizard geologist Hans Merensky, scientist, farmer, miner, philanthropist, the man who read the veldt. Hans Merensky was the seventh of 7 children, German, disciplined, curious. His father, Alexander, was born near Liegnitz in 1837. In 1855, he joined the Berlin Missionary Society. 3 years later, he was sent to South Africa. By 1860, Alexander was establishing mission stations north of the Vaal in Limpopo. Vast, untamed, dangerous. In 1863, he married Marie Leers of Breslau. Their home was German-speaking, Lutheran, firm, respectful of the land. Fort Wilhelm, later Fort Merensky, became a symbol of the mission and a playground for young Hans. Alexander bought a nearby farm. There he taught Hans to observe how the sun struck the veldt, the texture of the soil, and, most importantly, the shape of rocks underfoot. Simple lessons then. Later, they would shape a scientific eye and a deep responsibility for the land, for the people. Another likely early influence, the German explorer and geographer Karl Mauch, a family friend famous for his archaeological discoveries in Great Zimbabwe. Conflict came. After the First Anglo-Boer War, Alexander was mistrusted by British and Boer alike. So in 1882, the family returned to Germany. Hans was 11. Southern Africa had already left its mark. Next, school, discipline, curiosity, talent. He studied mining geology at the University of Charlottenburg in Berlin. Field trips revealed his gift, reading the land. He noticed subtle patterns in soils, rocks, and terrain. Practical training followed. Coal mines in Saarland and Silesia. Work with the Department of Mines in East Prussia. Prussian Reserve Service. Hans Merensky returned to South Africa in 1904. Officially, he was on study leave from the East Prussian Department of Mines. No longer the child of the mission, a trained geologist. Temporary plans did not become permanent. He resigned from the German civil service, set up his own geology and mining consulting practice, bold and timely. South Africa was booming. The Second Boer War was over. Mining surged across the Transvaal. Samples poured in. Ore, rock cores, promises of fortune. Merensky became the man investors trusted. He could tell them what was real and what was not. Much of his work came from German industrialists around Johannesburg. He analysed mineral samples, assessed new finds, wrote meticulous reports. Tin in the Transvaal, diamonds at the Premier mine, where the famous Cullinan diamond had been discovered. His reputation grew quickly. In 1905 he truly made his name. He exposed the Lecomte Madagascar gold concession as Uberfoul, rotten to the core, a fraud. In an era of hype and deception, his scientific integrity cut through the noise. He published influential papers: river diamonds along the Vaal, tin-bearing rocks in the Bushveld complex, diamond deposits in Ludwitsland, German Southwest Africa. By his mid-30s, he was no longer just a consultant. He was an authority, a man whose judgment could make or break fortunes. Hans Merensky was brilliant, but human. He made mistakes. Bad investments, not just for himself, but for family and friends too. Speculation followed him into the years before the First World War. It ended disastrously. In 1913, he was declared insolvent. The geologist who could read the earth with uncanny precision had failed to read the markets. A private man, never married, moved mostly in German-speaking circles, avoided public life, and yet his financial collapse was painfully public. The tension was striking. The son of a missionary shaped by discipline and learning, a scholar, and yet reckless, or just unlucky, with money. Then came the First World War. Because of his Prussian Reserve Service, Merensky was interned as an enemy alien. He was sent to a camp near Pietermaritzburg. There his health collapsed. He became seriously ill. Released in 1919, he faced a long recuperation. The timing could not have been worse. Germany's economy lay in ruins. German capital vanished. Mining consultancy work dried up. Debts remained. By his early 50s, he considered himself a total failure. The man who advised others on fortune had none of his own. Then, in June 1924, a river panner named A.F. Lombard noticed something unusual on a farm in Leidenburg. He sent a sample to Hans. Merensky understood immediately. Potential. A eureka moment. He had the sample tested in Johannesburg. The result? Platinum. Not a trace, not a curiosity. Something far larger. Merensky acted fast. He raised funds, formed the Leidenburg Platinum Syndicate. Within 3 days, platinum was identified in proxenite and ultra-basic rocks in Mooihoek and Mandershoek. By early September 1924, the famous Merensky Reef was discovered. He and his team traced it for kilometres, securing surface rights and mining options. The scale was extraordinary. The reef would eventually be mapped over some 300 kilometres. It remains the largest platinum deposit ever discovered, still mined today. And yet, Merensky did not become fabulously wealthy. He earned enough to settle debts, enough to restore dignity, enough to take a well-deserved holiday in Germany in 1926. After years of ruin, illness and failure, the land had spoken back to him. But one question lingers. Could a man so tested by adversity achieve even greater things without risking everything again? By the end of 1926, Hans Merensky was in London, no longer insolvent, no longer broken, but still searching. Then a rumour reached him. Diamonds. On the desolate coast of Namaqualand, a prospector named Jack Carstens had found them. When Merensky arrived on the west coast in December 1926, the rush was already underway. Over 1,000 prospectors flooded the shoreline. Diamonds were turning up everywhere, from the Buffels River to the Orange River. Most men chased luck. Merensky applied method. He moved quickly, carefully, negotiated the acquisition of 23 strategically chosen claims, registered under a new syndicate, the Hans Merensky Association. He held 50%. A calculated gamble, and this time it paid off. In January 1927, One of his prospectors found the first diamond. Then more followed. Large stones, high quality, consistent returns. After years of frustration, illness and failure, Merensky had finally arrived. He sold his stake to the Oppenheimer-Bonato Group for over £1 million, equivalent to roughly 450 million today. Sir Ernest Oppenheimer later remarked dryly, "You won't often meet a man who comes in with sixpence in his pocket and leaves with £500,000. For Merensky it was vindication, but wealth was never an end in itself. Could a man who had conquered diamonds now turn his attention to the land and leave a different kind of legacy? With a new war chest behind him, Hans Merensky turned away from mining, toward the land. Agriculture, not speculation, would define this chapter. He purchased the Westphalia estate near Duvelsklof from Sir Lionel Phillips, mining magnate and politician. Over time, he expanded it by acquiring adjacent farms. Eventually, the estate exceeded 5,000 hectares. Merensky focused on conservation, forestry and fruit farming, citrus, avocados, sustainability, long before the word became fashionable. Westphalia became a model estate, productive, disciplined, enduring. Today it still trades as Westphalia Fruit, owned by the Hans Merensky Foundation. Merensky never abandoned minerals. Gold had interested him as early as 1908, particularly in the northeastern Transvaal. In 1930, he assisted German geophysicist Dr. Rudolf Kramann analysing the Restaurant gold seams. This work led to mines along the West Wits line and further exploration in the Orange Free State. He gained little personally, but the industry gained much. During his platinum work in the Bushveld, Merensky had also gathered intelligence on chrome deposits. In 1937, he exercised an option on a farm southeast of Petersburg. An exceptionally rich seam of chrome oxide was discovered. A neighbouring farm, Wintersveld, soon followed. Both were eventually sold to Union Carbide. That same year, another opportunity emerged. An acquaintance, Max Roux, told Merensky of an old prospector. He had stumbled on a vast deposit of high-quality vermiculite near Phalaborwa. Merensky investigated, then acted. The deposit became one of the largest and richest in the world, mined through his Transvaal Ore Company. In 1940, war returned to Europe. Once again, Hans Merensky was a German in South Africa. This time, age spared him internment. He was nearly 70. For many men, that would have been the end of the story, but for Merensky it was simply another beginning. After the war, at 75, he returned to the field. Near Phalaborwa, he established a small camp. He personally supervised prospecting and drilling of phosphate deposits. The work was demanding, the terrain unforgiving, but the result was decisive. The South African government eventually purchased the claims. This led to the establishment of the Phosphate Development Corporation, Phoscor. Merensky had shaped yet another cornerstone of South Africa's industrial future. Only after this final achievement did he return to Westphalia for good. His health began to fail. His hearing deteriorated, yet his mind remained sharp, focused on one question. How could he ensure that his work and his values would outlive him? For the last 22 years of his life, Hans Merensky devoted himself almost entirely to Westphalia. Not as a retreat, as a living experiment. He fought soil erosion and land degradation, restored rivers and wetlands by removing invasive plants, planted vast eucalyptus forests, developed citrus and avocado orchards, experimented relentlessly with sustainable agriculture. Within a decade, Westphalia became an award-winning model farm. a benchmark for ecological scientific agriculture in South Africa. And yet, what people remembered most was not the innovation, it was the man. At Westphalia, Merensky often invited drivers and labourers to tea on his veranda. Dignitaries, well, they were left waiting. After the war, he sent food parcels to Germany, where hunger was widespread. He paid his staff's medical bills. His wealth always circled back to people. He never married, he had no direct heirs, and so he planned his legacy carefully. In 1949, Hans Merensky transferred 90% of his wealth to the Hans Merensky Trust, later the Hans Merensky Foundation, now the Hans Merensky Legacy Foundation. A deliberate act. His life's work would not be scattered. It would be stewarded. Today, that legacy endures. Merensky timber still thrives in forestry. The Merensky Library stands at the University of Pretoria. The Merensky Chair of Forestry continues at Stellenbosch University. On the 21st of October 1952, Hans Merensky died at Westphalia. He was 81, loyal to two places all his life, Germany and South Africa. And perhaps he said it best himself, "I am grateful to be able to give back to South Africa a fraction of what it has given me." So how should we remember Dr. Hans Merensky? A scientist? A miner? A farmer? A philanthropist? Or simply as a man who listened carefully to the land and then chose to give back more than he had taken?